Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the midday show here at the 4G World Conference in Chicago. I am having the pleasure to have a wonderful panel here for the GSMA. I am speaking with Mr. Ton Brand, and as well Mr. Matt Hatton, and of course Michael Coyne. How are you today, gentlemen?
Very good, thank you.
Very well, and my notorious co-host Nelson Pereira.
How you doing, Tony?
Excellent, fantastic. Listen, right out of the gate, I want to make sure that our viewers understand this is not only live, but if you have any questions, you can email them in to 4gworld@bnetTV.com. We're going to run right into things, and Ton, I'm going to start right off with you.
Sure.
Jump right into it, and we're going to talk right about the announcement and why you're here at 4G World.
Well, I think we've made 2 weeks ago, CTIA, a very, very exciting announcement, at least from my perspective. We've been working on the M2M in embedded mobile space for a long time within the GSMA, and much of the discussion has always been around, okay, how many devices we're going to get out there, right? And a lot of talk has been around 20 billion, 50 billion, and a lot of things are going on.
A lot of numbers floating in the market space.
Yeah, exactly, but the one thing was missing was, what's the revenue opportunity? And I think we've nailed that with Machina research that Matt undertook, because now we've got a popping 1.2 trillion US dollars in 2020 as a revenue opportunity, and I think that nails the M2M market down.
So you are the first organization to actually nail down this economic figure?
Exactly.
And how long did that study take?
Matt?
I should probably talk about that. So as the company that undertook the study, this has been around 9 months worth of work. So what we've done effectively is look at 13 vertical sectors, or sectors, call them what you will, looking at healthcare, looking at utilities, looking at mobile, broadband, everything. All the colours in all the sizes. And we've drilled down into each of these vertical sectors, looked at the dynamics of all the applications within them, and identified what the numbers of connections, amount of traffic, and the revenue opportunity associated with all of these devices.
From a industry perspective, from a immature market space, is 9 months a quick turnaround time on a report like this? Because in my opinion, it sounds like it would be, because there's just so many facets, and we talk about the M2M market at length on our shows.
Well, this is a very, very detailed and very it's required an awful lot of effort and an awful lot of detail across the whole of the company. Focusing on pretty much singularly on building this forecast database. It's a 1 million point database across 60 application groups, hundreds of applications, and so we think we've got that pretty much.
You nailed that straight down, Michael. I'm going to jump right to you because I want to get everybody's perspective before I start throwing out a multitude of questions.
Well, in looking at the report and listening to what you were just saying, we've seen some data points here in the U.S. market, for example, that basically show that the M2M piece can be higher margin business than the traditional consumer piece. And so if you're looking at going to, say, around 5 billion mobile broadband connected devices in 2016, which I think your analysis shows that like half of the connected devices are broadband, cellular basically. I think there's a major, the 1.2 trillion shows a major revenue opportunity, and moreover that revenue can be nice high margin revenue as well. So the operators have an opportunity to actually improve their bottom line as opposed to seeing decline.
So obviously with those types of numbers, we're looking at a massive ARPU opportunity for multiple players. Jump in here at any points in time too if you've got something to say.
In terms of ARPU, often not.
Okay.
So there's a lot of applications there which have very, very low ARPU. So smart metering, for instance, we're looking at sub 50 cents a month as an ARPU. But there's some very high ARPU opportunities. Smart metering, Sprint announced $150 a month on on digital signage. Yeah. And so it's very difficult to talk just in terms of M2M. There are many different applications and many different
It's such a wide market space, and of course my first reaction, my first question here was going to be, as an early adoption, what are we going to see come to market first in particulars of the areas of the M2M that are going to flourish faster on the onset?
Well, I think one of the early ones we've seen is telemedicine.
Telemedicine.
We've seen a number of application players in that space. They come in and they're doing some things that actually improve and lower the cost of healthcare. A company in California, for example, that when you step on the scale in the morning, measures your weight. If it happens that you're having congestive heart failure and you gain a couple of pounds overnight, that triggers an immediate call from the hospital. The net result has been a major improvement in reduction in hospitalization by catching things early.
Sure.
That's a very good example of a prime leading application.
No, I totally agree. I would want to point out as well that there are a lot of regional differences.
Geography is going to play a big factor in that. I agree with that. But okay, so going back to the M-Health sector, then, if you will, is that going to be the early adoption in North America, or again, is that sort of a global perspective? And the reason why I'm asking that, I'm just going to do it one more time here, is because we're coming up to the M-Health Summit. FNIH is here, in the beginning of December. This topic is going to be massive.
I think you can distinguish it within M-Health. You can distinguish two basic sets of applications. One being consumer oriented, and one being more to do with the clinical environment.
Okay. Yeah.
And so on the consumer side of things, this is a consumer electronics play really, and the adoption curves are looking like you would see in most forms of consumer electronics. On the clinical side of things, you've got a lot more hurdles to get over and a lot more barriers. Potentially there's a lot more revenue in there, but you've got a lot more in terms of barriers to get into that market, in terms of, do you want to be sued if this service doesn't work and somebody's seriously injured or dies as a result. You talk about critical applications. This is
I want to go ahead, Nelson.
No, I'm just saying, aside from the health side of the house, what about the device to device in terms of machines that are out there? I think
there's always my toaster.
Yes, this always reminds me of the fact of when you see the commercials now where they say, well, the vending machine ran out of cans. There is a wireless portion of it that informs the providers or the consumers out there. I really see not only on that example of the market, but I see a larger play in the industry in terms of not only to a vending machine, but a machine-to-machine relationship across the industry.
We've seen that actually. There's a number of oil field operators in West Texas, for example, that are doing telemetry, but it's more than just telemetry of what's going on in the oil field. It's the ability to actually control flows and processes and things like that. Tremendous cost reduction. They've been doing this today over satellite connections and a variety of other things.
Too expensive.
And they've actually looked at even building their own LTE network simply to get access technology to enable them to do this, because it would save them that much money.
Well, but that idea of building their own networks, that's something that we have seen in the past where utilities used to roll out their own networks to do the monitoring of electricity and gas networks. And some of those they hived them off into wholesale operators. They went bust, they lost control of them, and now they're having to look at doing this all again.
Exactly.
Nothing repeats itself like history.
I want to give props to Ton right out of the gate here, because the GSMA, in my opinion, has been in the last number of years really stepped up to the plate with entrenching themselves into multiple organizations globally, and then spearheading initiatives like this one, which is defining the market space better for not only the members but the ecosystem as a whole. So that being said, crown on top of your head. From the from the GSMA's perspective, now that this report is complete, how does the dissemination to the members get made, and then what type of committees are going to ensue? What are the calls to action, if you will, that are going to come out of it?
Right. Well, there are a number, actually. So we've distributed this obviously to members and associate members, but not alone to that, because what the next step we need to do with this report is go to the vertical markets.
Okay.
Because the vertical markets need to understand as well where the opportunity is, and probably even extend the report towards a more cost-benefit analysis for the vertical markets, because there's a revenue opportunity for them there as well, either in cost or in the benefits of this atmosphere. And health is a perfect example.
Prime example.
Yeah.
Automotive.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep. What we want to do is to do that first of all, but also look into the internal GSMA processes to find out how can we optimize what we're doing already for that market. Because everything up to now, let's be honest, has been handset driven.
Absolutely.
Roaming issues might become totally different in an M2M market versus what we're doing right now. Test and certification.
Right. So
you're not going to test drive with a fridge, right?
You might not. I love to usually talk about policy and control because it's on everybody's mind, and it's something that if we if we captured on the onset of, especially in the M2M market, then I think things flow much better for the entire ecosystem. And I'm going to look to you, Michael, to comment on that, because Sony Ericsson's point of view, if you're building and deploying these strategies for the rest of the ecosystem, policy's got to be at the top of the game.
It's actually absolutely critical. Let me give you an example from the consumer space and how that can impact M2M. If you look at major sporting venues, and we've seen with rollout of 3 and 4G networks, traffic patterns have changed significantly. We've seen traffic as much as 60% uplink, which is the opposite of the traditional view. Most of that was video. So imagine that same venue where you've got a lot of machine-to-machine traffic in there. It's also critical. You really need to be able to manage your network effectively, or something's going to give. And policy is a critical issue in making that happen.
Yeah. And regrettably, I must say, the regulators haven't identified the M2M space yet. Right? And that whole net neutrality debate is something that needs to be opened up for M2M applications.
I never really want to point. I don't like pointing the fingers generally at the regulators a lot, because I don't think a lot of it's their fault. I think that it's outside of their scope of what they deal with on a regular basis. Yeah. This panel happens to be entrenched in the ecosystem, so you're living and breathing it on a regular basis. You have the foresight to see what's going to come down the pipe prior to it happening, especially if you're commissioned to do a report, then you're going to see where a lot of those problems lie. That being said, is that number elastic, and then is the regulation of it? Are you advising the regulators, prior to the rollout of these things? Matt, I'm going to ask you first on the number being elastic, but
it is. This is an opportunity. It's a $1.2 trillion opportunity. Okay, and the ability of mobile network operators to seize that opportunity will depend on partnerships they do, their position in the value chain, and things around standardization, around policy.
So the regulators, I for sure are going to hear a number like $1.23 trillion, and it's elastic, and there needs to be policy. Right? We got to get our fingers in there.
And we do have to give guidance. I sit on the FCC advisory board for public safety, and looking at public safety applications running over commercial networks. And so, we're trying to advise that particular panel on how to work with industry to make sure that their needs are met as we evolve into this environment. So we're trying to do a bit of a look ahead there as well.
Yeah. Well, no, I 100% agree. We need to advise the governments and regulators on how this market is evolving. Policy control, security and privacy are all issues that they need to understand before they're regulated.
Okay, Nelson, I'm going to go to you first before I jump in all over the security question.
Well, that you brought up something about outside from machine to machine. You brought up the fact about automobile integration, and actually, I'm a big fascinator of it, because it affects the roaming portion of the data link between the providers and the automobile. And as you said, there has to be some form of regulations and policies where, if you have a mobile data portion of your phone, does it apply the same policy as your automobile, who also has a data connection to the network? Do they both approach the same policy? And I think regulations have to be in place that what applies to one doesn't necessarily apply to the other.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Yeah, that's 100%.
So I want to circle back to the securities question here in a second, but just to touch on the automotive, if the Department of Highway and Transport has mandated vehicle-to-vehicle technologies be in place by, I think it's 2016, what does that do to the M2M market? Does it accelerate it faster? Because when you bring something to market and the rest of the ecosystem understands what is going to transpire, they inevitably build devices out with further monetizations for the consumer.
Well, I mean, it's inevitable that regulation is going to drive a lot of these applications. It's certainly driving smart meters. It's also driving automotive in many cases. And once you connect to the vehicle, and there is a drive to connect vehicles.
Sure.
That is, if you pardon the pun, drive.
It's a drive.
There's a push to connect vehicles, and once you get those vehicle platforms into, there's the opportunity for running multiple applications, be it pay-to-drive insurance, or be it sat-nav, or be it vehicle entertainment across that same platform. So regulation in this case can really help with pushing penetration of M2M connectivity into certain sectors.
I am going to get back to the security question one time here or another, but actually no, I'm gonna do that first. Let's talk security. What are the barriers and hurdles for the security portions of the M2M market? Anybody jump all over it?
I think if you look at it, there are two ways to look at the issue, right? One is what's under control of the mobile operator, and one is what's outside their control, right? So for instance, one of the major issues that the automotive manufacturers are putting on the table is the issue of hacking the car.
Right.
Yes.
Immobilizing the car from a distance, because it's an IP-connected device all of a sudden.
Bad people and bad things are out there in the marketplace.
Right.
Fraud exists. We're going to have to protect it.
But the end user might feel uncomfortable about being tracked as well.
Exactly.
There is the security, personal security of the customer itself.
Privacy.
He may not like the idea that a provider is tracing him. I think there was an article actually not too far long ago that where they were blaming the telephone provider. I think it was something to do with Android or Apple, where there was a discussion: is it okay for the provider to know where the consumer is for beneficial and statistical reasons? And there was a big ordeal behind that in terms of, is that allowed?
Yeah.
And what is the government involvement in terms of that part of the security?
Yeah. Well, I would call that more the privacy issue, right? It's I'm from the Netherlands, and we had a very good smart metering project that was canned for now already 2 years, simply on the privacy. Had nothing to do with security, it was purely canned on the privacy issue. But coming back to the security within the pipe, I think mobile operators can provide a very good level of security within the pipe.
Sure.
What's outside it in terms of IP connectivity, that's the issue that we need to attack. Not only with the automotive, but actually with all the vertical markets that we're looking at right now.
And you come back to that, the example I used of the oil fields.
Right.
SCADA type devices connected out there that can actually affect critical processes. It's up to the application provider to provide that level of security. The operator can protect the pipe. Somebody needs to be able to protect the application space and make sure that that's not vulnerable.
So we've identified that we have to have policy and controls in place. We've identified security. What are two of the other top barriers or hurdles that we're going to have to get over before the M2M market can flourish at, I'm assuming, a hockey stick type pace?
Not quite hockey sticks.
Okay.
In fact, for the simple reason that there are different applications that take off at different rates as you get the evolving environment. So it's more linear than you might expect.
From an adoption of a handset market or something.
Exactly. Compared to what you would normally see in the market. In terms of barriers, there's an interesting one associated with the value chain. Okay, so what's the role of the network operator in the value chain? How do they partner with the selected partners? And they have to. It's a balance, right? So they want to. There's not a lot of money in M2M in terms of just carrying traffic, because a lot of these are very low bandwidth applications. So you have to be further along the value chain than that. You have to be involved in the services and the device management and so on. But at the same time, there's a lot of expertise associated with any particular vertical sector, and so you need, as a network operator, to also partner with people who are experts in that vertical sector that you're working with. So there's a balance to be struck between the two.
I'm gonna look right at you, Michael, because Ericsson is going to be, looking for their piece of the pie at the top of the food chain.
Absolutely, we are. And one of the key things I think that goes with what you're saying is, you're looking at a lot of devices being connected, and a lot of those devices don't have a human interaction behind them. So one of the keys is their frictionless addition of devices, frictionless provisioning. We've seen the early example of that with Amazon and the Kindle, fairly friction-free from the point of view of AT&T. And it actually helps their bottom line because it reduces the overhead in terms of providing device onto the network.
Yeah. Hence, coming back to your earlier comment about margin, because if you have a very good provisioning and management system, your margins go up.
Exactly.
Matt, final closing remarks from you regarding the research report and the space.
So regarding the research report, it's a massive opportunity for, or what we're highlighting is a massive opportunity for network operators and also for everybody else who might, well, pretty much any vertical, any sector. There's some way in which M2M communications can help in terms of reducing costs, improving efficiency, improving the quality of service that they deliver to their customers. So absolutely critical for the next 10 years that anybody who well, any company in any vertical is looking at end-to-end and how they might implement it.
Ton, final closing remarks from you regarding GSMA's position and how happy you are with the report.
Well, very happy. Very excited because in a million
Machina,
years...
check.
Yeah, well, in a million years I never thought we would get to that 1.2 trillion. And I think that kind of indicates, the market growth. Most important is GSMA needs to work with vertical markets, understand their requirements, change our terminology, line up with them, understand what they're talking about, and get them to understand what we are talking about, and move it forward.
Succinct and well said. Michael?
Fully agree. I mean, the bottom line is there's a lot of room in this sector for a lot of players. And the only way to do the verticals is to reach out to people who understand their industry and their segment, to build those applications and to bring them into the operator space.
And Nelson, final closing remarks, my friend.
I believe the industry is like a highway. You need to know where to put the traffic lights. It cannot be an open road.
Succinct and well said. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the opportunity to spend some time on the midday show. Matt Hatton with Machina Research, Tom Brand with the GSMA, and Michael Coyne with Ericsson. I am Tony Sklar with bnetTV, live from the floor here at the 4G World Show in Chicago. Tune in for this afternoon show. We are going to be talking with Mr. Koichi Tagwa from the NFC chairman. I am Tony Sklar, and we will see you this afternoon. Thank you.